So you've all heard a lot about showing services lately. And we've got some folks you know pretty well here from the MLS space. You probably heard about a hackathon they had coming up into this event around the showing service space. So we've got Chris Haran of MRED, and we've got Mark Bessett of CRMLS. We're saying 2/3 of the hackathon brain trust here to talk a little bit. We'll be talking about this in data dictionary breakouts a little bit later too. But come on up, guys. It's yours.
All right.
Frank Major was the other third. He's already up here.
Wave hi, Frank, unless you already left the room. Oh, he really thought we were going to screw up today. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Haran with MRED.
Mark Bessett with CRMLS.
And you'll see both of us a couple times throughout this conference as we work for a few different work groups. I'll be later on with Showing Subgroup, and then tomorrow with Interoperability.
And I will be with the Universal Property Identifier on Thursday.
Excellent. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get our slides up here, unless we're going to do this all from memory, which we've certainly done this enough that you think we could. All right. So as you've probably heard a lot today, a common theme with the presentation start off has been choice, and that's going to continue with ours and what we're doing with the showing service project that we've been working on between the three of us. So Mark, I'd like you to actually start a little bit and maybe give a little bit of a story about how this all got started for us.
So as we all know, there's the showing time acquisition going on and a lot of angst and membership across the United States. And we found that we have different members and friends that in other MLSs have the same issues. We got together, started talking about it, and what we thought would be, how are we going to solve this problem for the future as of course dozens of would-be showing vendors were knocking on our doors and we're listening to all these ideas, by the way, many of which were really good and weren't even available with the current technologies. So that's how we sort of started out the thought of, hey, how can we put choice into this model? And I know at CRMLS, we've been heavy into choice since I've been there, so it's been longer than that, so it's probably been at least 4 to 6 years or longer. It's a central theme that we have, and so we wanted to develop some standards-based technology around how we could offer that kind of choice to brokers, choices of multiple showing systems and not necessarily just one.
Yeah, and so we really had, in defining the problem, we had 3 pillars that we wanted to look into, and those 3 pillars really all came back to what kind of choice we could provide to our brokerages. So a story in MRED's marketplace is in February, we had one of our largest brokers, actually our top brokerage, came to us and said, you know, we've heard this news, and all we ask of you is if you're going to bring in other options or allow other options in the marketplace, make sure they talk to each other. We don't want to lose the network effect that we've had happen with showings over these last couple of years and have it completely fragment. And that really stuck with us and really drove what we decided to do when we started working with Bright and with CRMLS. And you can see that some of these pillars that we thought about was that, you know, the MLS is really involved in some of these core products and services, and that we recognize that scheduling showings is a huge piece of that transaction, what makes that transaction really work well, really run efficiently. And we can't support every single product at an MLS level. Like, that's just not possible. But if we have those standards and those integrations built on those standards, we can do a much better job of supporting that. So with all of that in mind, we started talking about what is the problem. And really quick, raise your hand if you have a showing service in 2021 that you have built or offer in this room. Oh, I know some of you are lying. There's a way more showing services than that. So, and maybe some of you have them hidden here and don't want to talk about it. But that was really what we were seeing is, like Mark said, there are so many different showing services available now. And it's great to have that choice. But then as Frank said earlier in his presentation, you have to support that choice at an MLS level. We have to make sure that your brokerages, your agents, your subscribers can bounce back and forth between their systems and use the system that they want to use. They don't want to have to learn every single service out there just to be able to schedule a showing. They want to be able to stick with the product that they have. And in defining this problem, we really wanted to do a lot of research. So I think all 3 of us did a bunch of market research, and that's usually what technology is, right? You barely get to the development until you talk to your customers and find out what they really need. And this is what kept coming back to us is we want to stay in our system. We want to be able to have that choice.
And there was a lot of overlapping research, and I might add that at least one of the people pitching these services to us, I asked a question. I said, what about choice? What about when the member changes his mind about which showing system that they wanted to use? And the response I got back was, we don't really think that's a valid use case. So That was interesting. I thought more people would laugh when I said that. I laughed when he said that.
So Mark, talk to a little bit about where we were heading before we started talking through some of the solutions we could have.
So as we decided that we wanted to go down a path of choice, as Frank brought up already, that becomes a huge problem if there's no standards in place, and some of the would-be recommendations were, hey, let's make a standard and have all these showing systems talk to all the other showing systems, which can be a nightmare. I don't know how many people have done integration. I've been doing integration a long time. That is, I guarantee you, a nightmare. That's where we were headed, I think, with the model that was being presented to us, at least at the time. So we banded together and like, hey, so what does it look like if we did not do that? I think we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute on the solution here. We thought about having a hub, and this hub model would allow all the different showing systems to talk to each other through a hub. That's, if you think about a hub, it's like a USB hub, right? Every device on your USB hub just plugs into the hub, and all the rest of the devices on your system can recognize that other device through a hub. This is just basically the same model. It's only done at a regional level versus a universal or national level. There's lots of ways to do this, and I think we have a couple different choices here that we show.
Yeah, and we had talked about what are the different options for showing interoperability. So Mark mentioned the hub. We had talked about a distributed model where everyone's building those integrations with each other. We talked about a centralized model. Could we do something across the entire country that everyone buys into? That would have been, kind of the utopia, but the really business case question there is who supports that and runs it, right? If you have that centralized model for the entire country. That just didn't seem feasible, especially in the time frame that we were working with, which is we had services that were starting to come out. We had brokerages, we had marketplaces that wanted to have multiple options right away. So we talked a little bit about what are those different options that we can have. And we talked about what were some of the negatives with those. And Mark was already mentioning, especially with something like the distributed or the fragmented where they're talking directly to each other, you're actually asking showing providers to do a lot of work in building custom integrations with each other market by market. So they're not just building a custom integration with the other showing provider, they're building that custom integration with each individual MLS. So there were a lot of different problems to solve, and it wasn't just all about making it easier for brokerages and MLSs, it was also about making it easier for the showing providers as well. So those are some of the options that we looked at, and Mark, you want to talk a little bit about why we chose the localized approach for what we're trying to build out?
So the localized approach basically is very similar to a centralized approach, except we can take and simplify each region. So now there's a region that can essentially have some sort of semblance of control, contracts, things like that, and it's not some national plug-in piece. And obviously we don't want that completely distributed model for the complexities that Chris showed. So we decided to go with a regional-based model that where any vendor that wants to participate can participate in that regional hub. And that's not to say that a vendor could not participate from a technical perspective on all the hubs that ever existed, right? So if there's many, many hubs that are logically put together or physically put together in different regions, that would still work. There's not really a problem with that. Think about seat maps or a reservation system for airlines, right? I mean, you go to one place and then you find out all the different airlines the different flights and seats that are available across the U.S. If you go to Expedia.com, right? It doesn't matter. You don't have to go to American and then over to Southwest and do all that comparison on your own. You can bring those together in an aggregated way and still make those reservations. So it's that kind of distributed hub model. It's a hybrid.
And talk a little bit about why we think this is beneficial to entrants who are already there, but also to new entrants and to anyone else that might be in that ecosystem, and really how standards help create some of that innovation.
Right, so I did have some calls that came to me when we were doing this hackathon after they had kind of looked at the documentation that was there, and their concern was exactly that. It was, hey, how does this help me out? How does this change what I'm doing? It feels like I'm gonna get squashed by anyone that's really big. And actually it's the converse of that, right? Because now you're with the hub model and the ability to communicate to other showing systems via this hub, which means you're completely abstracted from that other endpoint. You can communicate independently, which means that the broker or whoever's going to consume that showing system doesn't have to worry about different contracts with different people. They don't have to worry about any specific integrations with them. They integrate with the vendor of their choice. That vendor can then integrate with the hub, and then everything else is just downstream without having to worry about anything from an integration perspective that might complexities that might occur with that. So that actually makes the playing field quite level and democratizes the entire problem, at least for showings. And we're talking about real-time or near real-time communications. This is not a replication model. There's no complexities associated with that, throwing everything over the fence, as someone mentioned earlier. That problem doesn't really exist because we're making these queries on demand, and what comes back out are events. So as different things on a foreign, quote-unquote, foreign showing system, those would still come back as an event to the local system that the user's consuming. So that way we get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and so we threw up a diagram here, and this is a nice, we didn't want to have all text on the screen, so we wanted to give you a little bit of a visual, but this is what, during the hackathon, our people have been working off of. And Mark mentioned already the real-time versus replication, and that was a really big tenet of what we wanted to do here in incorporating some of the RESO standards that we are using. So you can talk a little bit about the technical implementation and what we're hoping to build out of this once we get the feedback incorporated from our hackathon participants.
Right, so in this diagram you see that really the people using the systems are still just using those systems. They have no knowledge really, and they don't really have a care of having to work with multiple systems because each of the showing systems communicate through the hub, and user doesn't have to know about that. So that's a way that we can manage the connectivity, we can manage the integration, if you will, help simplify. If you remember Frank's slide, it helps simplify the ability for us to offer multiple choices. And the interesting thing that came out of this research we were doing is we noticed a lot of niche areas of across the country or even in different business, so like a buyer's agent use of a showing system is way different than a listing agent's use of a showing system, which is different than a call center's use of a showing system, and it goes on and on. There's actually many use cases there where one of these blue boxes could be just specializing in one part of that transaction, and they can just do the job tremendously well and earn their place in the ecosystem and not have to worry that they don't offer all these services that would otherwise you'd consider for an MLS contract, for example. And it also frees them up from being squeezed out from an MLS contract, right? Because at an MLS we like to go, hey, let's get this guy, he's the best. And that's the contract. And so then all the members are sort of have to either do something on their own or they can use what's in the MLS. And we wanted to offer more than that. We wanted to be able to say, no, if you want to do something different, that'll work. And this is exactly how it happens.
And the other thing to notice on here is when you're looking at it is you don't see the word MLS on here at all. Like obviously in our markets, we're envisioning the hub being the MLS, but maybe that's not the case in your market. Maybe the case is you work with someone else to build that, a technology partner, a showing provider. And that's really the idea behind this is we just wanted to help make this for the industry something that was easy to help these showing services talk to each other. Because obviously the three of us had similar problems that I'm sure all the rest of you dealing in your markets are having too. So we did want to make this as agnostic as we could. And you don't see names of anyone else on there either other than the brokers on either side. So really anyone could jump in and out. It could be a brokerage building their own pieces of this platform as well. And the idea, again, is that it's really easy to integrate into this ecosystem because we have standards that everyone's agreeing to share this information back and forth. So, all right, so quick update on timeline before we finish up here. We began actually in Q2, which I've only been in the MLS side of things for about 3.5 years, but I can tell you without a doubt this is the fastest I've ever worked on a project in my life in getting something done like this. Q3, we started building this platform and standards together after we'd done a lot of our research, and now we're in Q4. We're obviously presenting to you today. We just finished up our hackathon, and our plan for next steps is we're going to ask all of the participants of the hackathon, which we had great participation there, for their feedback on what we did right, what we did wrong, and we're going to incorporate that. And hopefully we can get something into production relatively soon based on that feedback we're getting from those people who helped us with that hackathon. And I think, Mark, we wanted to open up maybe like a preview session after we incorporate some of that feedback as well.
Right, we're going to incorporate some of the feedback and then we'll open up access in a preview model so that people can essentially participate. There won't be the real hackathon, but then we can get some more information on what their experience was. And it's like Tim was up here earlier and he talked about non-monolithic, and what we've really built here is actually a perfect example of a microservice that someone would connect to, which fits exactly into that non-monolithic model. So looking at the next, Q1,
Q4 and Q1?
or so. Yeah.
We don't want to put dates on it.
We
You know,
don't
we're
wanna-
tech people. We don't want to
yeah.
put dates on anything. So
Don't want to stress out software guys.
our marketing
right?
people are freaking out right now, thinking we're even saying quarters at this
marketing
point.
people.
So
It's been,
right
it's been
now,
really successful.
Yeah.
We had a great showing of sorry for the pun there, but we had a great showing of different vendors.
Yep.
And we had some really interesting innovation, and we had to go through with our grading scale, and we're going to announce the winners now.
yeah, for our grand finale, we did have winners. So thank you, RESO, for helping us to support this hackathon. So we had a special prize for interoperability, and the winner of that was
Showingly.
Showingly won our interoperability prize. So congratulations to them.
The criteria for interoperability was showing exactly what we just had on that diagram, was where we have multiple different use cases working independently and still communicating and making that happen.
In third place, we had Patrick A. Neely, had a great submission. So congratulations to Patrick. In second place, we had Rechat as well. And in first place, taking home the grand prize, Mark.
Showingly.
So congratulations to Showingly. You guys did a great submission. To learn more, to see more about the winners, visit us at showingchoice.com or buy us a drink on the beach later. We'll be happy to talk to you about what we're doing. So thanks, everybody.
And thank you for that great sunset, RESO people, that great sunset last night. That was awesome. Thanks for putting that on.